All right, thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Nikki Ward. I'm the state coordinator of Tennessee History Day, which is the Tennessee affiliate of National History Day. And today we are going to be talking about the 2024 theme of turning points in history. Every year, National History Day puts out a theme, and students are challenged to create a project that not only proves historical significance, but also ties to that theme. If you're unfamiliar with what National History Day is, I would tell you to pause this, go and view some of my beginning sessions that talk about building a project or kind of introducing you to the program itself, and then come back to this video because this does assume you have some level of understanding of what National History Day is. A quick primer, it is a year-long history education program for students in grades 6 through 12 that focuses on project-based learning. It's an opportunity for students to learn history by engaging in hands-on historical research on a topic in which we hope they are interested in. And it's an exploration of any topic in world, national, state, or local history day. We are called Tennessee History Day because we are the Tennessee affiliate. It does not mean you have to do Tennessee History Day in your project, although that is always encouraged. A little bit about how topics can be selected. Let me pull my notes up here. So, really the only thing that is deciding these parameters is you. Students have, it is their choice what they would like to research for the year. Again, they can do local, national, or world history. We're looking for historical perspective here. Students must explain the topic's relationship to the theme through their research and their presentation. And the big question we always get is, what is history? How far back do students need to go? And there's no hard and fast rule in the rule book. Generally, we tell students that if historians haven't written about it yet, it's probably not a good topic just yet. We need that historical perspective and context for it to be a historic topic. Otherwise, it's still a current topic. We're watching it unfold. Our kind of general rule is 20 years. So for this year, that would be 2003, which is kind of wild. And when we think about it, the theme itself, a theme is really big and broad enough in scope to encourage investigation of topics that range all over the place, right? Local and global history. And we're asking students, when they are thinking about a topic, they need to ask questions of that topic, right? They need to think about time and place. They need to think about cause and effect. We're looking for change over time that is built into the rubric, and then impact and significance, both short-term and long-term. Something that and I'm going to share these resources later, but two big questions that I found through some resources from National History Day in California was, what choice was made? What decision was made that caused a change? And then how did this shift history? Now, sometimes it's not a choice, sometimes it's an event, and that event doesn't have to be done by a human, right? It could be a global, like a weather disaster, things like that. But in general, when we're talking about human history, a decision was made. So looking at that choice and then how it shifted. I did steal this from something that they created, so I will give them credit on our Padlet page and share this resource with you because I think it's great. They said a turning point in history can be about many things, like a political change, a new law or court decision, a protest, an innovation, or a natural disaster. What's important is that it happens because someone or a group of people made a choice or did something that changed how things were in society and culture. Once a turning point happens, we can't go back to how things were before. It's like a big, important moment in history that leaves a lasting impact on everyone. And that is from National History Day in California. So let's look at how the rubric looks at the theme. This is the judge's tool for analyzing your students' work. And I think before we have any conversation about theme, it's important to look at this to see how this is grounded in that work. So it moves from a spectrum of novice up to exemplary. They use a consistent scale. So we're going to see consistent, mostly, somewhat, and minimal in each of the sections of the rubric. And for our purposes here, with novice, annual theme has minimal clarity, and the topic to the connection to the topic in the project and argument is unclear. Most likely, the student has popped the phrase turning point in their title or somewhere on their board, but hasn't really made that point in their argument and the research itself. And then we move all the way to exemplary. Annual theme is consistently clear and connected to the topic in the project and the argument. So we're seeing it not just in the title, not just in the components of whatever exhibit or documentary piece they are doing. We're seeing it through the research and their student voice. And they're also bringing that into, some students forget to bring that into the process paper and the annotated bibliography. If you're looking at a primary source and it is helping you make that connection to the theme, mention that in your annotation. So the big thing here is, how is the theme present in the student's work? Some of the things that National History Day provides every year, besides worksheets that I'll show you a little bit later, is a video. I'm not going to play this for us tonight because it's about 12 minutes long, and I think it's really great. This year it is written more towards the teacher instead of the students, but I would still play this for my class because I think it is a useful resource. It looks at how turning points can be events, how it can be a person or a decision that a person or a group of people have made, and it can also be ideas. And so just know that this is a resource that is available for you. It's going to try to play for me. Okay, so in general, when I'm thinking about the theme, the first thing you must settle on as a class is the definition of a turning point. What is a turning point? Discuss that as a group. I'm going to kind of walk through this talking about the theme at large, but then also relating this back to how I would have introduced this in a classroom setting. I would have had a group discussion about what a turning point is. You can provide the definition or have them look it up. A few definitions that I found: the point at which a significant change occurs, that's from Merriam-Webster, or from the THD theme book, a turning point is an idea, event, or action that directly or sometimes indirectly causes change. So once we kind of discuss this as a group, making it relevant to students' lives, I think, often clarifies things. Turning points is a little bit simpler than frontiers, I think, because everybody's experienced a turning point in their own life. But bringing it back to their own experience, what was a turning point in their favorite book or their favorite movie? Ask them about something that they are maybe reading in their ELA classes, or a recent a piece of media that they've been studying. Think about famous turning points in sports, music, or popular media, or even turning points in their past studies or of history, right? What were they talking about last year that might have been a turning point after you've decided on this definition as a class? Something to think about with this is sometimes the turning point has immediate repercussions, making its significance obvious to people at the time. And sometimes the impact of an event or decision can only be clear in retrospect. So with that, I think letting students kind of explore turning points that they can think of. And then I would pick an example as a class, and then we talk through the context of that event. So I have an example here. I think for most students nowadays, they can't think of life pre-internet. I can, but they can't. Their whole life has been online. So to them, this is ancient history. So I would maybe try to direct us towards the invention of the World Wide Web as a turning point in history. So work through an example of that in general history with your students. Maybe it's not directly related to your content area. It's a little bit more relevant to their lives. Maybe it's a turning point in a Marvel movie, right? The snap, that you could work through together. So what was it like before, during, and after that turning point? If you do pick an actual historic topic, I would enjoy doing this research together. Like, throw your Google screen up on if you're able to, or have some independent researchers looking for, and then also they probably have examples from their own life of what their mom or family members might have said life was like pre-internet, and then during and after. And then thinking about what factors contributed to the development of that turning point. They can speculate a little bit here and then do a little bit of research, right? How did they communicate? What was communication like prior to the internet? What was access to information like? How would you have researched a History Day project? Thinking about these things as contributing factors too, and then have them research hard and fast facts about why was the World Wide Web created. Why did the turning point develop? How did it create change? And then what were the immediate and long-term consequences? Spend some time researching together and then come up with a few. I would do like a graphic organizer on the board as we work through this together. What impact did the turning point have on the people who experienced it? And then how did they in turn affect the internet? Did they make suggestions? Did things change? It is definitely different now than it was when it was first created. So what was that long-term effect? Then link your group example to the importance of context for your students. I think especially with turning points, it's really easy for them to understand context because it was before, and then there was like this hinge moment, right? There was this turn, obviously, and then there was life after that moment. So context is really important. Otherwise, it's just a thing that occurred, right? Students will be challenged to prove that this event, idea, or person is a turning point in history. For this to be done, students must ground their work in primary sources. Those are important because they haven't been interpreted by other people. You can approach history without the influence of other people's opinions. I pulled that from the Guide to Research provided by National History Day. It's on our Padlet if you're interested in that free resource from NHD. Again, they have to ground it in context. Without the context clearly given, your students will not be able to make an argument for a turning point. Without context, it's just a thing that happened. And then they need to get specific. Students need to find the swivel moment, right? The moment that things changed, the choice, the event, and really drill down on the that turning point. We look at a line, right? History. Unless you're a Doctor Who fan, time is normally linear. So looking for that point where things changed. Okay, so topic parameters. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but the only thing that limits your students, besides history itself, is you. Some things that you can think about when you are looking at topic ideas. All of your content standards, you can just let them loose on your content standards. You can look at a specific section or unit or a couple units, maybe say, let's look at first semester only as we are kind of digging through this, or let's look at ancient Egypt only. You can do a whole semester of your content. You can add the option for state and local history. I have some examples later and some ideas for you if that's something you're interested in doing. And then if you are really just trying to get your kids to care, you can open it up to any of their own interests. If they can make a good argument for a turning point in history that they find interesting that isn't related to your content, because they're still working through those social studies practices. Even if it's not content related, they are still doing the work of a historian, and you can assess their analytical and historical thinking skills through this project. You can also limit categories. This is a really good new teacher tip. Consider having students only do a couple of the options, especially if you're not planning to attend a contest this year. You're just doing a school level contest. Maybe just do exhibit and website, or, exhibit and documentary. This, it kind of eases your time up a little bit. You're not having to learn as many rules or kind of keep on top of as many types of projects that are going on. If you do plan to attend a contest, keep in mind entry limits exist. So if you're interested in that component, you need to make sure that you do a school level contest and you're not bringing 30 exhibits to your regional contest. So something that's really important when you are thinking about a topic that is related to your theme is narrowing it down. If a student has a topic that is too broad, the research will be too overwhelming, there are too many primary sources, and they only have 10 minutes, or a certain amount of words on their exhibit panel to be able to make their argument. So the broader it is, the less focused their argument is going to be. So we have a worksheet for you available on the Padlet. It is now fillable. If you are needing that option, you're wanting to put it in Google Drive or whatever your learning management software is. And you can use this to help them narrow down their choice. So when you think about the topic funnel, however, most of it is completed using secondary sources as they are learning about their topic at large. And as they get closer to the bottom towards the research questions section, these research questions are written for primary sources. What questions are you going to ask of your primary sources? What questions do you have, and what types of sources are you going to need to find to answer these questions? These research questions can inform your research. And then for students that are interested in major events, like World War II, for example, encourage them to zero in on a specific battle, a specific technique, or person. So a sample here, we have the theme, which is turning points in history. What is the theme this year? General interest, what area of history would you enjoy spending time researching? So for our example here, we have racial equality. Broad topic, so within that area, pick a larger theme. I chose the American Civil Rights Movement. And then we're going to narrow down a little bit further. So I'm a Nashville native, so the Nashville sit-ins are particularly interesting to me. So that's a narrow topic. So now I've gotten a little bit further down from racial equality to Nashville sit-ins. You can go further than that even, right? But for our purposes here, now we need to create research questions. So what questions do you have now? What questions are you going to ask of the primary sources you're going to be analyzing? So my questions here, what did the students do to prepare? Who helped them? Where did these take place? What happened during the protests themselves? What were the immediate effects, the short term, and then the long term? How did the media react to this? How did locals react to it? So within that, I'm looking at images, I'm looking at newspaper articles, I'm looking at possible legislation, I'm looking at journal entries from the time period. All of these research questions can inform the sources I'm going to be looking for. And then historical argument, I say revisit this after you've actually spent a little bit of time looking at those primary sources, so that you can inform that argument. What are you going to say about the Nashville sit-ins as a turning point in history? We always have to bring it back to that theme. So I have a few examples. I wanted to kind of quickly bop through content areas because I know that sometimes it's hard to conceive of doing a History Day project with just our content, but there's a lot there. So I have a few examples. So we have analyze the impact of the introduction of written law in the Code of Hammurabi, explain its basic principles of justice. I think this would be a great turning point. As far as what the sixth graders learn, this is the first known set of written laws, and it provided regulation of judgments, trade, business, and social relationships. So ancient history can be tough, but it is possible. Again, we always tell our judges it is not about the amount of sources, it is about the quality of sources and how you've used them. So when it comes to ancient history, that can be the challenge, but know that we are here to help you with ancient history topics. Jumping to 8th grade here, got a little local here. Locate and explain the significance of the following during the American Revolution. I picked the Battle of Kings Mountain, which for Tennessee history, they mustered up at Sycamore Shoals. So for our purposes in the classroom, first major setback in Britain's southern strategy, and it initiated a chain of events that would result in Cornwallis' surrender at Yorktown. So thinking about this as a turning point, what was unique about the opposing armies here? How were they armed? What were the immediate results and then long-term results of this? So you could drill down even further from this and do a specific strategy or person. You could do Sycamore Shoals as related to this standard as well as the theme. Jumping to African American history. Describe the contributions of African Americans to the visual arts during this era. This is from a unit, including the work of William Edmondson. So I picked this one because he's from Tennessee. He's from Nashville. He's born to a family of formerly enslaved Tennesseans on the Compton Plantation in Davidson County. And he would become recognized as one of the most important Black American artists of his time. He was recognized during his time as an important artist and became more obscure later, and he's coming back to prominence now, or his work is. He started his career in carving by creating headstones for Nashville's Black cemeteries. Some of those are still viewable today. And then this grew into freestanding figurative work for him. So he had the first solo show dedicated to a Black artist at the New York Museum of Modern Art in 1937, which that event in and of itself might be a good turning point. I pulled some of this information from the Barnes Foundation website. All right, let's look at ancient history. Evaluate the significance of the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars. And I think that The Battle of Salamis might be a really good example of that, specifically the trireme. I would maybe just do the trireme itself and its uses as a turning point in history because it was extremely advanced. This is a good example of a technology as a turning point. And, you know, the way that battle ended up going, with these smaller, faster ships against the Persian ships, they could maneuver and ram opposing vessels. And so they sank 300 vessels versus the 40 of the Greek that ended up being sunk. And then just looking through some of the other classes that are available here in Tennessee, contemporary issues. With contemporary issues, there's lots of themes of geography and civilizations. Casual factors foster past and current conflicts. So we're looking at cultural differences and boundaries. American public policy as turning points in history. With economics, there's a lot there within those content standards. Reaganomics, monopolies, trade history, the Federal Reserve. We have here a picture from the Black Patch Tobacco Wars, which took place between the American Tobacco Company and the Planters Protective Association, and actually resulted in death in southern and western Kentucky and northern middle Tennessee as they were fighting over trade and labor. Union history is also a really interesting economic issue as well. Sociology, language and how it reflects and transmits culture. Culture wars themselves as turning points in history or things that initiate culture wars. The history of specific social problems in the United States. The history of the American criminal justice system. This is a picture from the Coal Creek Wars, or they're also known as the Convict Lease Wars, which is between miners up in the Appalachian region and the owners of the mines, and also the governor. So there's all these different people at play within this event, and it as a turning point in the criminal justice system here in the United States. And then, of course, Tennessee history is full of it. I won't go through all of these, but State of Franklin would be a good project. The development of the Ku Klux Klan and its impact on history, Fisk University, Peabody, Perfect 36 is an easy one. And you can also do things, I think Opryland would be an interesting topic, right? Opryland as tourism in Tennessee and the idea of a theme park based around a radio show and music itself. Something I always like to point people to are their local sites. So you can look at state historic sites as a resource. The Historical Commission is over the state historic sites. You can see on their website, you go, it looks like this, you can click on them individually. And I will tell you that the historians and the people that work, these museum professionals that work at these spaces, are really great resources. And not only can they help you as you explore primary sources, but they can clarify questions that you have about context, about the things that you're reading, and help provide for a fuller project. And then there's also the Tennessee State Parks. Many of them do have historic sites located at them, and the rangers there are extremely helpful. So they're all over the state. A few of the state parks that I thought would be interesting as far as turning points in history of Cordell Hull's birthplace, T.O. Fuller State Park, which is in near Memphis, or in Memphis, Natchez Trace State Park, Fort Royal State Park up in Adams, Fort Loudon, and then Old Stone Fort, which is an archaeological park that has remnants of Mississippian Mound. Port Royal actually has one of the last preserved spaces of the Trail of Tears in Tennessee in its park as well. Some other places to look if you are looking local. Local history markers are a really great way to not only explore your surrounding, but find something that that your city has already tried to teach you a little bit about and dig further. You also have local archives as a great resource. So here you see pictures of the Rutherford County Archives. This is a great place to kind of start digging in on your research, and always call in advance before you visit an archive. Let them know you're coming and what you are looking for, and they can really help you dig into your primary source research. Small museums, historic sites, and historic houses, and then again, state parks. So what we see here the Macklemore House in Rutherford County, County Archive, or the Macklemore House is in Franklin, sorry. The Rutherford County Archives here, Promised Land Schoolhouse, and then Clinton High School, so Clinton 12, and then Rugby, Tennessee. So let's look at a few resources that are available to you already. We have the theme book that is provided every year by National History Day, and it's available digitally if you are looking for that. If you want the PDF now, I will be sending out theme books a little bit later so you can have the hard copy, but it is available to you now if you're interested in reading it. Within that, you are going to find essays from some of National History Day's partner organizations like the Library of Congress, Chicago History Museum, National Museum of African American History and Culture. There is something within here that I wanted to point out because I think it's a really great primer on conducting quality research here. And if you don't have the time to dig through their guidebook for student research, this is a really great, about 6-page article that gives you kind of a quick refresh of helping your students with their historic research. There's also the theme graphic organizer that they make every year. It looks like this, that helps them dig into the idea of a turning point with their specific idea. Maybe you use this with your class as you come up with a theme or a topic together, and then they can do one of their own choosing. The theme introductory video that tried to play for us earlier is available for you online. And then I wanted to point out sections of both the Library of Congress Teacher Guide and the Library of Congress Student Guide. So they both have very similar names. The ones for students says A Student's Guide to. It still says student in the teacher one, but you can tell which one is for the students. I have those linked on the toolkit for you if you want to check them out. They are very large PDFs, so unless you are really wanting to highlight it, I would recommend not printing it yourself and looking at the PDF that's available online. So for the teacher guide, pages 18 through 27 really work through the idea of that work through your student's topic, help them really flesh that out, tie it to the theme. And then in the student book that is written for students, pages 32 through 45 focus in on topic selection. Lastly, there are topic starter cards that are available. I think they're making a few updates to them, so I'll link those on the Padlet soon when they are done. But these can be used in a couple different ways. I have an example on the next slide. Basically, students will scan the QR code. This is one from last year that says Frontiers in History, but it's the same idea. So it'll say Turning Points in History at the top. And then students are asked, what is the turning point in this historical topic? And then what perspectives will you consider as you explore this topic? Perspectives is a good question out the gate because not only does it helps us keep a full lens of all of the players that are within our historical topic, but also perspectives inform the primary research you're going to be doing, right? If you are looking for a variety of perspectives, you're going to end up doing wider research naturally. So a few ideas for activities. Turn those starter cards into stations. Maybe print them out, large format, and the kids can scan or pull up on a Chromebook, or maybe you have the article posted next to the station for them. And I like the starter cards for students maybe that aren't in that content area. So if you're teaching ancient history, maybe do some American Revolutionary or American history starter cards so that they are pulling from previous learning and not necessarily tying it to this content because we're thinking about the theme in general, not tying it to the learning that we're doing specifically right now. Brainstorm notes, have students independently or in groups use paper or poster to come up with turning points that are either ideas, events, or people, and then they can present those to the class. These can be pulling, again, from previous learning or future learning. Maybe they're exploring their textbook as they are looking these things up. Or they can think of turning points in popular culture or in books that they've read. Make sure you put parameters on it, and we're not putting like personal turning points on there, but having things that, we're thinking about initial brainstorming, the idea of that turning point. You could do a jigsaw lesson where use a simple graphic organizer, idea, event, people. and assign students in groups. Say, okay, you guys are going to look for an idea that is a turning point, and then have that group decide on a topic and do some preliminary research, and they have to tell you why that is a turning point. Then they will break out, go to a secondary group. Those other groups have somebody that has an idea or an event. Everybody shares, we fill in our notes. Then we go back to our research group and share what we've learned from the other groups that we got to talk with that day. I love the idea of pulling in primary sources as you were talking about the theme. So pairing this with the primary source analysis tool and then connecting that to the theme. So using the Library of Congress primary source analysis tool, have students analyze a primary source related to current or past learning, and then pose the question, how does this relate to the annual theme of turning points in history? Then have them, using language from the tool and their own prior knowledge, explain that connection. Maybe do that as an exit note or reference when it's time for them to explore topics on their own. You could also do this backwards, maybe show a picture and then tie it to the theme first, using that previous knowledge or learning that you've done together. So this is something you've already looked at a little bit, and then filling out that primary source analysis tool and then making further connections. And then sometimes it's nice just to release them into their social studies book and see what pops out to them as interesting. And maybe they really get interested in a map or a specific picture that they've seen, a pull-out quote, things like that. And maybe give them a few sticky notes and say, I want you to find 3 things in your textbook, and it doesn't have to be things we're talking about right now, that could be a turning point in history. And have them tag them and share with a neighbor or share with the class. I like doing that because it gets them excited about things they're going to learn in the future. And it also familiarizes them a little bit with your course and gets them thinking about things a little bit more broadly. Again, my name is Nikki Ward. I'm the state coordinator of Tennessee History Day. My email is historyday@Tennessee, all spelled out, history.org. And I have all kinds of resources available for you online that are related to the theme and then other components of a National History Day project. You can find them on the Padlet and on my website here. So the website links to a lot of resources as well as that Padlet page. I'm doing another seminar in September where we're going to run through the rubric. We're going to talk about in depth each section of the rubric and what judges are looking for, and then how you can connect that to your own classroom environment and the social studies practices that you are engaging with your students. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to provide more resources or clarification, specifically when it comes to something like, the theme.